Evening. My name is Mike Haney, and welcome to another edition of 60 Minutes in Black America. We have a great show for you today, some updates, as well as some information to guide you through this holiday month. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey, my name is Mike Haney. Welcome back. Welcome to another edition of 60 Minutes in Black America. And we really expect this one to be a great one as we decided that we weren't going to wait until the 26th when Kwanzaa started, but begin it a couple of weeks out so that you can prepare and understand Kwanzaa and celebrate Kwanzaa with the other holidays that you may celebrate during the month of December. And today we have with us Dr. Jackie Green out of Indianapolis, Indiana, who I consider an expert on Kwanzaa, someone that practiced it faithfully. And she was with us last year and gave us a history on Kwanzaa as well as how we can celebrate it. So we're going to do this for the next 40 years to ensure that we as a people, we as a community, understand that we do have something as African Americans that we can celebrate in the month of December, not to replace Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever it is that you celebrate, but something in addition to that that hopefully guides you going into the new year. So I want to bring Dr. Green out now so we can get right into the conversation. We're also going to be updating you on a myriad of things that are happening in our community, as well as some commentary. We're going to follow back up to last week's cryptocurrency investment with our young people. And we've got Jamie Miner in the back studio that'll join us a bit later. But Dr. Green, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're quite welcome. I'm glad to be here to talk about one of my favorite holidays.
So why is it your favorite holiday, Dr. Green?
Because it really acknowledges contributions of our ancestors. It really puts them on the forefront. Um, when Dr. Malana Karenga established the holiday, he wanted us to really get in touch with our African roots and to realize that we didn't start here with slavery. We started when the continent was first populated. So it's important to remember that we came from people from long, long ago who taught most other groups everything that they know today.
Now, you mentioned who started Kwanzaa, and I think it was a professor out on the West Coast, but you mentioned why he started it. But when did it start? Could you give us a bit of the history of when it started, how it started?
Yes, it was really an outgrowth of the civil rights movement in the 60s. And in 1966, he established Kwanzaa, and he really wanted people to acknowledge our African roots and to remain connected to the continent. Actually, Kwanzaa means fresh fruits. The official name is Matunda ya Kwanza, first fruits. And it really is spelled Kwanza. But when he had his first celebration, he had 7 children who wanted to participate. So he added the extra A. So Kwanzaa, which the word comes from Kiswahili, the language in East Africa. So Kwanzaa actually is spelled with only one A on the continent, but we here use 2 A's to designate the difference.
Yeah, wow. And, as I mentioned at the top, I really want to implore our people as African Americans, because this is an African American holiday, right? To acknowledge us as Americans, but us as Africans that have come from the continent of Africa and understand, as Dr. Green said, the traditions. And so we really want our people to understand the holiday, what it means, and that it doesn't, as I mentioned before, take the place of Christmas, but that it is a holiday, Dr. Green, that celebrates how many? Seven specific journeys, I call them, with the first one being what, Dr. Green?
First one is umoja, which is unity, which is inviting us to remember our collective nature and that we need to be together to strive for unity in the family, not only in the family, but also in the community, nation, and race as well. So umoja is usually it's the first tradition, and I always participate here in Indianapolis in a gathering, and we always celebrate unity, and we are as a group coming together at that time.
So Kwanzaa starts on the 26th of December and it lasts until the 1st of January, Dr. Green. And there are seven candles associated with it. So are the candles lit in any sort of order, or as you mentioned, your moja, which is the first day that recognizes community and family? Are they lit in a certain order, or how do, as we educate and indoctrinate our people about Kwanzaa, let's take them through exactly how you do it, because your family celebrates is a lighting of the candle, eating of fruit. You mentioned that you get together with a community out there in Indianapolis, but what is it that a family can do with Kwanzaa just to understand it and get started? Seven candles?
Absolutely, seven candles, and we start with the one in the middle. That is the black candle. That's emoji. You
The
start
one
with that
behind
one.
me, the one
Hmm.
in the middle is the one that we start with, the black one.
Absolutely, but let me back up a second because the three colors are red, black, and green, and the red stands for the blood that was shed. The black stands for our skin, our color, who we are, and the green stands for the land. So that's how Milana selected red, black, and green for the colors of Kwanzaa. And so the first candle, of course, would be the black one because that represents us and that represents the unity. The second candle is Kuji Chagalia, which lots of people have trouble pronouncing, but it's
Say it again for us, Dr. Green.
Kuji Chagalia.
Kuji Chakalia. I remember I
Uh-huh.
had problems with that last year and I've been practicing it all year long. Kuji Chakalia.
You've got it. You've
Yeah.
got it.
So I've been practicing it all year long because it's significant. And Dr. Green, I implore our viewers to embrace this conversation, embrace what we're speaking of, embrace what Dr. Green is saying, because Dr. Green has said so far that we can start off in our home with seven candles and that the black candle is in the middle. The candles are red, green, and black. There's one black candle, right, Dr. Green?
Absolutely.
And that black candle is the first one lit. Is there any ceremony around that lighting, Dr. Green, that's performed?
Well, absolutely. In fact, first we start with, if I could hold this up, a cup, a Kwanzaa cup that anyone could use to pour libations. So the first step in usually the ceremony is to pour some water. And as you pour that water, you acknowledge ancestors. And the ancestors could be people that are related to you. It could be people who've made a difference in your life. It could be a singer who touched you with their words. It could be a writer who has impacted you. But the first step is usually to pour libations and then to proceed with the lighting of the candle. We start with the black candle. The second one is Kuji Chagalia, which is the red candle to the immediate left.
So
And
to the left, if you're facing, and viewers, we are going through this because we really hope you embrace it. We want you to comment in the chat. We want you to let us know next week and the days after that that you're practicing it, you understand it. Go get some paper, take some notes so we understand it. So, Dr. Green, if you're facing the seven candles with the black one in the middle, so to your left, you start lighting.
yes, the second day you would light the second one.
And what's that ceremony look like the second day? So you're lighting the first one again, and then you light the second one for the second day.
Absolutely.
So now you've got two
Two.
candles lit.
Absolutely. Then the third day, it's Ujamaa, collective work and responsibility. So you light the first green candle to the immediate right.
So you go left with the second day, then right of the black candle for the third day.
Yes,
And
yes.
let's back up, Dr. Green. Let's talk about self-determination the second day. You know, we talked about the first day, being in community, family, recognizing someone, either ancestors or someone that's important to you. But self determination, from what it means to Dr. Green or members of your family, how do we recognize this? How do we speak to it? Is there something that we do with self determination going forward? Or what's the significance of recognizing self determination? Reflection, or as something that we look towards making certain that we're aware of we have to do?
Self-determination is being certain of who you are, being the one who you're the one who defines yourself. You don't allow others to define you. It's not
Wow.
there's a quote about it's not what you call me that matters, it's what I answer to. And so it's determining for yourself who you are.
Wow. So that's powerful, Dr. Green. So you say it's not what it is that you call me, it is how I so is that a reflective day for you, Dr. Green, to look in, or is that a reflective day for viewers to look inside and see who we are, what we are, and understand that, who we are is what it is that we do, believe in? How do we go about looking at these seven principles inwardly so that at the conclusion there's some benefit and value to that?
Well, actually, for me, every day is a reflective day. And what our family does is from, oh goodness, time that they're 3 on up, um, they identify a principle that they'd like to work on for the year. And then the next year, they report on how they did and what they'd like to work on the following year. So it invites participants to select one. Like if you are unclear about your own definition of self, maybe you would work on that during the year. Or if you think there's something that's part of your purpose and you're not positive, you might ask some questions about that during the year. But we uh, keep track of what we've committed to do each year and we follow up. Also, there are opportunities during the year to follow up as well to find out how are you doing with this principle? Did you implement it in your life? How did you do that, or do you need help?
Wow.
And it can be something that a child does. I'm going to get to bed on time. That I want to be known as a person who's on time. That could be how they define themselves.
Wow.
Uh,
Well, I want to put the comment back up from Michael Randolph down in Tampa, Florida. There was a comment up in terms of how he uses it. It says, Michael Randolph, and Michael, thank you for being a regular viewer of ours. We have used the principles of Kwanzaa as part of economic development strategy to transform Black communities. And Dr. Green, this is what I was speaking of. And you're watching 60 Minutes in Black America. Today we're talking about Kwanzaa with the hope that our communities embrace Kwanzaa as one of the holidays. We have with us Dr. Jackie Green out of Indianapolis, Indiana. If you're watching us on Facebook, please like us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. But Dr. Green has talked about the reflective period or reflective ability of these principles, and that you mentioned, Dr. Green, that you take one and say, hey, for the year, that's what you're going to work on, right? So let's go to number three. And number three is what?
collect
Ujima?
Ujima is what I
Ujima.
call it, or Ujima. Ujima.
Ujima. Uh-huh.
Collective work and responsibility. And that's how we work together as a group, how we support one another. And that's the first green candle to the immediate right.
The first green candle to the immediate right. So viewers, and we're going to break it down for you. We're going to slow this down because, as I mentioned, we want you to embrace it. We want you to practice it. Consider it another holiday, as we do Christmas and Hanukkah and any other holidays we celebrate. New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, the black candle, which is the first principle of umoja is lit first, and
Mhm.
then the second candle, okay, and Dr. Green pronounce it,
Kuji Chagalia.
Kuji Chakalia is lit to the left, right? And you can put that candles back up there, please, and just hold them so we can go through our viewers. So that's the second candle on the left. And then Dr. Green says the third one that we're on, the green candle, is lit third,
Hmm.
right?
Ujima is lit third. Yes.
And that is collective work and responsibility. Is that what that is, Dr. Green?
Absolutely. Working together toward a project, supporting one another. We have a tendency to not support ourselves in the ways that we could. When we look at economic development, particularly among African Americans, we our gross income is humongous, but we tend to spend it other places. We tend to not invest in ourselves. But collective work might not even be related to finances. It could be just pitching in to build a house together, pitching in to play a game together, pitching in to clean up the neighborhood. All those could be aspects of collective work and responsibility.
Well, it seems as though these principles, Dr. Green, are principles that our community could live by. And if you can't recall, you can always go back and watch this broadcast for the definition of it, but Google it as we Google everything else and hit Siri button and ask about the principles of Kwanzaa and to what Dr. Green said. Perhaps there's one that appeals to you as we go through the seven. And she says that she takes one or people take one and they say they embrace that for a year and that becomes part of their work on themselves is to practice that particular principle during the course of a year. So Dr. Green, now we're at the fourth principle of Kwanzaa.
Absolutely. That's Ujamaa. That's cooperative economics.
Ujamaa, you said Ujamaa.
Ujamaa. And that's cooperative economics. And that's what I was alluding to almost as we talked about the third principle. But that's really investing, doing things together, supporting businesses. Uh, Buying black could be part of that. Um, Cooperative economics is certainly something that our communities would definitely benefit from. So here in Indy, they have a Unity Day where all the black small businesses come together and are vendors for the products that they sell. And we support one another in that way. Many of the products in the Kwanzaa way are homemade. They're self-made. They're individualized, so that you can't just. They're not commercial. So you could get a Kanara, and I was going to try to bring mine, but it was too big to put here. But you can get one that's made with your name on it,
So
or
Dr. Green, just for a second, you described, is that the holder of the candles? What did you describe that as?
the Kanara is the holder of the
Kanara.
candles.
Okay, and so that's a
Hmm.
terminology that let's get our viewers used to. Kanara is how Dr. Green described the holder of the candles, and this is something that I believe is important for our communities because you look at many other communities and other cultures, they are able to bond, they are able to collectively look at economics, they're able to collectively look at how they support each other in community. And Dr. Green talked about that support in Indiana and or Indianapolis, how it looked as far as supporting small businesses. And this is something that I believe that we slow down for a minute and grasp and take a look at each as we've gone through the first three and we're on the fourth one now that means something in terms of how we could better pool our resources, support each other, work together for the betterment of our community. We talked about cleanup days. We talked about using this as something that can guide our young people, our children, of simply talking to them about making up their beds, making up their rooms. And I think that if we're able to embrace something that kind of gels us in our communities, and Kwanzaa seems to be it, let's take a minute and understand it. Let's understand where we are. So that fourth principle, again, Nia, is that what, how'd you pronounce it, Dr. Green?
No, the fourth one is Ujamaa.
And Ujamaa is cooperative economics.
Economics. And one of the ways that we have done this in my home when my sons were teenagers and they were all into the tennis shoes. Well, there was a man who had played basketball and then later he bought an athletic shoe store. And so for them, they needed to make a purchase at his store. We weren't going to go to some of the bigger ones in the mall. We went to his store, and that was a way that they supported collective cooperative economics.
Dr. Green, let's pause for a second and talk about your family, right? Because you mentioned your son, and we had that wonderful picture, which they'll hopefully be able to find of your family. And how did you indoctrinate, engage your family so that there it is. That's your family, right, Dr. Green?
That's it. Yeah,
So
yeah.
talk to us about them. It's like six of you, right? Is it like
Well,
put
there's one more, and what's interesting is he always comes for Kwanzaa, but I think that year he was taking the bar and he wasn't able to attend. But he'll be here for Kwanzaa again this year. And we just, goodness, we began before the three in the middle are my grandchildren, and we began way before them. So we just, with my sons, so we just brought them into the practice that we already had.
so
Um,
so this is a part of them. It's a part of your family. They've been raised in the tradition of Kwanzaa because it's something that you always have practiced. Now, does this in your household supplement Christmas? Do you still have Christmas decorations and celebrate Christmas and you just move into Kwanzaa? How does your family handle that as it relates to the other holidays that we are see as significant?
well, actually, we do a little bit of both. Um, we usually have a Christmas tree. That's because we've had young people in the family and they look forward to the Christmas tree. But we also have the Kanara, and we have all kinds of like Kwanzaa artifacts that are all around the house. Everything says Kwanzaa. I've got Kwanzaa lights. There you are. Um, but now there are lots of things that you can get that symbolize Kwanzaa. And so I've got different candles around the house. I've got poster boards. Every year we put out our Kwanzaa letters, huge letters that we put on our outside on the lawn, and people drive by and wonder, is this a subversive kind of thing? What's going on here? But we've done it every year. We also have some signs that we hang. But in the house, there are just things all around that emulate the principles. So you might
So,
see,
so the headband that you have on, and
mhm,
some of the other
and my shirt.
your shirt that you have on, and your young people, your family embraces in their clothing as well. Is this something that helps you identify with your heritage and history as it relates to celebrating Kwanzaa? Or is that something that you recommend that families do as well? Like I wore what I
Mhm.
was given from Uganda today as a remembrance of my time there and our history and heritage there as well. Is that something that you recommend that we take a piece of something in our families to identify with history and heritage?
I think that's helpful to do. I think it's important to honor our ancestors, to honor the past, and by wearing some of the fabrics that they wore, I think that is a connection that we can have in a nonverbal kind of way. Absolutely. And the picture that you have is from our Kwanzaa community ceremony with the first day. And so we always wear our African garb to that event. And we usually have something on each day. We've got t-shirts like this. We've got maybe a bracelet or a necklace, something that says Kwanzaa that reminds us this is the season that we're celebrating.
Wow. And that's powerful. And we really, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, want our families and our community to embrace it. The statistics say that only about 4 or 5% of people in our community celebrate or understand Kwanzaa, but over 90% Christmas. And as we mentioned, it's not a replacement. And I'd like to think that the reason that we don't celebrate it is because it's their lack of understanding. It's a lack of understanding as to why, a lack of understanding as to how. And that's why we're taking our time breaking it down, because what we have talked about so far, as we have accumulated these principles, is the benefit for self, the benefit for community, and the benefit for family. So, Dr. Green, one more family question for you before we go to number, I think we're on number 4 or 5.
We're on 5.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, we're on 5, but one more question for you. So, I've got a young family, husband, wife, husband. How do I embrace or indoctrinate my young people with this holiday? You know, explaining to them the reason we're doing it. Do I use the candles and the tradition as a way? But how do I get them to embrace that when they've embraced Christmas so long? How would you suggest? How did you embrace your young people? They
Well,
grew up with it?
we have we've had lots of struggles with Kwanzaa. When I first started, there was very little information about it. It was not part of the social media. You'd hear about Christmas. You'd even hear about Hanukkah. And I realized that in the stores, I could get Hanukkah cards. I could get their similar candle fixture is called a menorah.
Lenore.
So it's real similar in pronunciation. But I could find those things, but I couldn't find anything about Kwanzaa. But now there's an abundance of information. There are books. There are books for children, little picture books. There are coloring books. They're even on the internet. You could pull off a sheet where a young person before school even could just color on that. So there's lots of information available now. And stores have decided, we can make some money if we have some of these things around. So more stores are having Kwanzaa cards. I send greeting cards every year that highlight Kwanzaa and usually describe the principles. And now I get a lot of Kwanzaa cards back from some of my friends and some of the people with whom I work. So we're still expanding knowledge of it. I first learned about it from going to an African-centered conference in Louisville, Kentucky. It was called the Black Family Conference. And I started, maybe in late 80s. And so that, and Milana Karenga came to the conference. So that was my beginning. And so I brought that home and talked with my family about it. And then we began. But in my family, because they're older now, you didn't have a choice about whether or not you participated. Your parents would say, "We're going to do this now."
Wow. I like that, Dr. Green. I like that, you realize and it's good. And one thing we have to recognize, we are African American. We're African American, and the African is because that's where our history and heritage has come from, right? For like 99% of us, we originate from the continent of Africa. And
Mhm.
as Dr. Green said, hey, buy your young person a coloring book,
Mhm.
as a way to get acclimated to this holiday, this wonderful holiday that African Americans celebrate. I believe it started in 1963, right? Around the
66.
1966, around the
Mhm.
civil rights movements, and
Mhm.
something that we can learn from. So, Dr. Green, we're on the fifth.
Mhm. And the fifth one is Nia, purpose.
Neat.
Considering what is your purpose? Why are you here? What are you supposed to do? What's your connection to this land, to other people? But it's really looking at what is your purpose. And I think that's one that our family really struggles with each year. Someone always picks purpose and tries to further define what their purpose is. My thought is that when we're quiet and we look inside, we connect more spiritually and our purpose becomes clear. But one of our purposes is certainly to uplift our people. And that's what Kwanzaa is about as well. It's seeing the value, Ubuntu, I am because you are. It's seeing the value in the collective nature of ourselves.
So, Nia, Dr. Green, is that Swahili or what language is used in describing the principles of Kwanzaa? Is it all Swahili that's used?
Yes, it's all Swahili. I studied it, and so we call it Kiswahili. I'm not sure why, but my first trip to Africa was to Tanzania. Kiswahili is spoken on the east part of the continent. So Kenya, Tanzania, Zanzibar, and maybe some other places as well. But yes, all the terms from Kwanzaa on, all the principles are in Swahili.
Well, let's talk about Swahili for a minute, Dr. Green, because there's a multitude of languages on the continent of Africa, and Swahili is what, from a language standpoint, on the continent of Africa. Could you talk a bit about Swahili and why it
Well,
was developed?
well, all the countries had their own languages, and most Africans are multilingual because in order to trade, in order to converse with people who didn't live far away, they had to learn other languages as well. I really liked studying Kiswahili because it helps you to be able to pronounce words that look like the letters don't fit together well. It really helps you to do that. And it helped me to understand the conjugation might be just in one word. So if African Americans, they say our inner city language, if a child says something like, he be playing or he be doing, well, all of that is in one word in Kiswahili. They don't
Wow.
translate it like that, but I thought, wow, that language might have come from the continent. The way that we abbreviate, the way that we leave out words, the past tense and present tense and plurals and singles can all be in one word. So it taught me a lot just learning about the word structure.
Well, when I visited Africa, Dr. Green, and I was in Kenya, but yet, and Kenya has you know, a significant number of tribes. And then I went to Uganda. There's one thing that they all can communicate with, and that's what Swahili or Kiswahili, as you mentioned. But Swahili seemed to be a universal language that was used regardless of the tribe you came from. If you spoke Swahili, you can communicate with other countries or tribes, even within your own country. Is that accurate?
Well, accurate for the East Coast of Africa primarily, but on the West Coast, they were colonized as well. So I communicated with my brothers and sisters over there in French for Senegal and the Ivory Coast and Mali, where they spoke other languages, but one of the ones that I could relate to was French. They did not speak Kiswahili on the West Coast.
And Dr. Green mentioned the word colonization, and we did a show, if you all remembered, a couple of weeks ago, where we talked about the colonization of Africa, the colonization of Ghana by the Portuguese, and how many colonies that Great Britain established in Africa and subsequently in the Caribbean islands, and how that colonization took many resources away from us as a people. But today we're talking about history and heritage of Kwanzaa, and we're on Nia number 5, which is purpose, right? Defining one's purpose. Is that what you described, Dr. Green?
Absolutely. Who am I? What am I here to do? How can I help my family? How can I help my community? Absolutely. Purpose.
And Dr. Green said that, getting your young person a coloring book using cards, and I've said it 4 times already, Kwanzaa is not a substitute for Christmas, but a holiday that acknowledges us as African Americans that was started in 1966. So why can't we use this for the betterment of ourselves, the betterment of our community, and the betterment of our country as a people? So, Dr. Green, we're on number 6.
Okay. Well, let me say this just to follow up with what you said regarding the principles. I see these principles as things that you could use all year long. There are things that you could use for instance, at one time I ran a youth program and we used these principles to evaluate youth progress and to set goals. I've seen it also used in senior programs. So it's not like age specific. You could use it with older, you could use it with younger, you could use it with those in the middle. People could use it in their marriage to make sure that they're on the same plane regarding what they value and what they'd like to see occur.
Well, Michael Randolph from Tampa, the comment earlier, he said that they use the principle in business and economic development of business. So you're right. And
Hmm.
I guess it's a matter of us embracing and understanding the definition and looking outwardly and inwardly in terms of its benefit and guidance to us as a people, as a person, in terms of being better. And what I really like, Dr. Green, you said earlier, is to embrace one. Understand the
Hmm.
definition of the seven, but embrace one and look at one as something that I can spend 365 days or 66 until the next year and mark my progress of improvement. For instance, self determination. Number
Hmm.
two,
Hmm.
Dr. Green, help me with number two. We're going to go back for a second.
Okay.
What was the word? How you pronounce it again?
Kuji Chagalia.
Kuji Chakalia. Number two was self determination. And I may embrace that for the 2023 so that I have some real New Year's goals, that are embedded in the principles of Kwanzaa. So where are we at now? Number six, Dr. Green?
Now we're at number 6, Kuumba. Kuumba.
Kaumba, Kaumba.
Creativity. And I think that we see that throughout the continent. When I watched people hold a piece of wood with their toes as they carved just intricate, um, oh goodness, they had canes, they doorways, they you name it, they could carve it out, and it would just be absolutely beautiful. Candlesticks, in a matter of minutes, just give them a block of wood, and they could probably make your face. Kuumba is part of our heritage. These are very creative people, and we have that creativity as well. We are multi-talented. I think in this country, we reward people for, being smart, being mathematic, or having command of the language, the king's language. But there's so many ways that we are creative. There's so many things that we can do instead or in addition to. And when we look at our people, look at, for instance, basketball, football, tennis, um, golf, skating, ice skating in particular. Usually, once we get into a sport, we excel. Gymnastics, we do it in ways that they've never thought of before. That's because we have an extra creative kinds of lens. It's the same with literature. When we write, when we produce plays, when we produce books, uh, it's a similar kind of thing. We take people to places that haven't occurred before.
And why is that, Dr. Green? You said we have a special lens. And I'm thinking that you described us as a people, as Africans, as Americans, and our creativity. And maybe it's a result of being denied a lot coming in this country and having the desire to do, because we know that tennis and ice hockey and those things aren't traditional to the sports that we may play, even golf that you had mentioned, because either maybe there was a barrier to cost, maybe there was a barrier to interest because people did not want us to participate because we had certain abilities that may have exceeded theirs. But you said we, as you described us as a people, are particularly talented. It seems that you implied in our creativity and ability to grasp things. Do you agree with that? Are we superior? And maybe that's not the right word, but are we talented people?
I think we're multi-talented. I also think that when we were stolen from the continent, the ones who survived were the strongest, were the ones who were the most able, and that we've always had these abilities, but we were not allowed to express them in the way that we might have liked. So when they open the doors and we walk in, we typically excel. But it's things that our ancestors had. When we look at some of the things that were written by people in our community, like John Hope Franklin, like oh goodness, I can't think of the names of Marcus Garvey. When we think of people who have written about the movement, when we think of the sacrifices that people were willing to make to teach others about us and what we were capable of doing, we have an inner strength that I really believe comes from through our ancestors.
Wow. Dr. Green, we're down to number seven, and, we're talking about Kwanzaa as a holiday. And we said that we're doing this a couple of weeks in advance. For viewers that may have just joined us, Kwanzaa starts on December 26th, and it goes through January 1st. And we're going over all seven principles of Kwanzaa. And we talked a bit about the ceremonies around Kwanzaa in terms of the lighting of the candles, which identify with each of the seven principles. We also spoke of the entire family embracing it and educating our young people, particularly our children, as we have indoctrinated them to the wonderful holiday of Christmas. Maybe you celebrate Hanukkah, that we want to indoctrinate them to history and heritage, which was the reason why Kwanzaa was conceived in 1966, to give us an identity and let us see that there is a connectivity to us as Americans or African Americans, because that's who we are. We're African Americans. Dr. Green,
Mhm.
we're at number seven.
At number seven is Imani, faith. And so it doesn't matter what faith you practice, whether you're Catholic or whether you're Muslim or whether it just doesn't matter. Just how does your faith touch you? Where are you? And I can give you an example for me. I practice a different faith. I practice one from the continent. I practice Yoruba. And so does my oldest son. And we both
Yoruba,
said,
Yoruba,
mhm.
Yoruba.
And it comes from Nigeria. And it's a religion that, um, goodness, when Africans were brought to this continent, they were penalized for celebrating their religion. Um, and so still on the continent, there are those, when the colonizers came, who began to deny their faith because they would be punished severely if they did. But my faith is Yoruba. And what I promised to do this past year was to spend more time learning about it, practicing it. Um, we have certain principles that we embrace, and there are those who believe that the principles that originated on the continent are forerunners of Christianity. So that while you all have like 12, 10 um, characteristics that you believe, 10 rules. We have like 144.
So
And
you're talking about like in the Bible, the Christian Bible,
the
the Ten
commandments,
Commandments, the Ten Commandments, and you said there's 144.
we have 144. So
I
what
guess
my
I'd
son,
be in trouble, huh?
my son and I have been studying the first 12. That's what we're working on. We've been
Can you give us
studying
a
like,
sample of the first one, for instance? What is it?
uh, well,
Or any one of 144 in terms of we have 10 commandments. You said you have 144. Are they similar or are they just
they're
delve
very
deep?
similar. They're very
Mhm.
similar. And when you begin to look at different religions, you see that there are common threads through all of them. So I really don't understand why we're fighting about the faith, because there are so many common threads, whether you're Buddhist or whether you're Muslim or whether you're Christian or whether you're Yoruba. There are so many things that would link us together, but we
Wow.
don't tend to do that.
Well,
Um,
well, Dr. Green, you talked about faith, and you even went further in terms of faith. Kwanzaa celebrates us as African American people and ensure that we understand our ancestral roots and acknowledge our history and heritage. And you went to the continent to absorb a faith there that you practice here in America because you took it even further to understand practices and principles over there on the continent. And how many times have you been to Africa, Dr. Green?
Oh, probably 5 or 6. I've been to South Africa and Egypt and East Africa, several places, and then West Africa. Went to Mali, Timbuktu, embraced an orphanage in South Africa, adopted a godson in Ghana. Just have been lots of places on the continent. And each one has taught me so much about the real, to me, one of the real strengths of the continent is that actions are considered to benefit not only the individual, but the family. And beyond the family, the community. Um, I learned from some African students that they do well. Africans do better than any group that comes to this country to go to college. That is not a fact that is shared, but that's the truth. They said that the reason why they do better is because they do it for their family, their community, and their ancestors. They said
Wow.
that African Americans tend to strive so they can make more money, so they can get a position. It's a whole different kind of value system. So
Wow.
every time I go to the continent, I just see that practice in action. I also see that once people are older on the continent, they aren't discarded. They still have roles in their community. And in fact, the elders are revered. They aren't put in senior citizen centers hoping that someone will come to visit. They're in the midst of the community. They're looked to for their wisdom. There's a lot that we can learn. That's in my first book, which I should have held up. But spiritual resilience, I look at what I learned from the continent and things that we used to know that we need to go back and embrace again. And Kwanzaa helps us to do that because we look back to what did our ancestors do? How can I be thankful for them?
Hey, Dr. Green, it's been great having you. And I wish you had held up your books. I mean, you've written what, 7 books?
Just 5.
Okay. I mean, well, you may have 2 more in progress because, we've got to have you back on here just to talk about that. We've had you on here a couple of times. Matter of fact, I think this is your 3rd visit. We haven't even gotten to your books and your self-help and some of the other things you've done because we really wanted this conversation to be focused. So as we wrap up, if you could do us a favor and just go one by one the names only, maybe a brief description again of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, starting with Umoja, right?
All right. Umoja, unity. Kujichagulia, self-determination. Ujima, collective work and responsibilities. Ujamaa, cooperative economics. Nia, purpose. Kuumba, creativity. And finally, Amani, faith. I
Wow.
have
Well,
I have a doll in my house I've named Imani to remind me of my faith as I go through the house.
well, Dr. Green, it's been wonderful having you today. And is the expression "have a happy Kwanzaa" one that we say, or how do we say that when we meet people during that period of the 26th to the January 1st? How do we express to each other that holiday?
Well, actually, to say have a happy Kwanzaa, we probably wouldn't be doing this, but it's Kwanzaa Yinu Iwi Naheri. That's how we would say it. But actually, we just say Umoja, we say unity, or we say
Emoja,
Habari Gani, which means what's the news? And
Habari
Umoja,
Gani,
and then
Umoja.
Umoja is unity.
Well, we're going to keep it simple. Viewers, go get a coloring book, a card, saying cards with Kwanzaa, understand the principles. Dr. Green, I am going to book you for next year because we're going to continue to ensure that our people have an understanding, if it's on this show, before the holiday of Kwanzaa, how and why, and you've done an awesome job of doing so. And I saw Reverend Mercer shout you out earlier and said, "Hi, it was good to see you." Michael Randolph, it was good. We appreciate your comments. And Dr. Green, I will absolutely be in touch. Any final thoughts, Dr. Green?
Well, in addition to books for children, there's also books for adults on Kwanzaa. which will describe the principles and activities that you might implement. There are also cookbooks if you want to embrace some of the cooking from the continent, or maybe just remember some of the recipes from people in your family, some of the ancestors.
Wow. Dr. Green, thank you so much. And make sure you join us next week. Next week, we'll have Ada Brown from Cameroon talking about the culinary aspect of African cooking. And they are doing culinary expeditions from America over to Africa. So Ada will be joining us next week, talking about the culinary exploits of American cooking and immersed with African cooking. But Dr. Green, it's been great to see you, and thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you're watching 60 Minutes in Black America. My name is Mike Haney. Dr. Green has just educated us in the holiday of Kwanzaa, which we hope you embrace. Start off this year. Let us know that you've gone out, you've got a book, you've sent Kwanzaa cards, you've studied a bit of Kwanzaa. It doesn't have to overwhelm us. All it has to do is guide us and allow us to realize that there is something that can collectively benefit our community and continue to hold us together as a community coming up this month, the holiday of Kwanzaa, just as we do with Christmas. Hey, so as I mentioned earlier, we're going to do some updates today. Last week, we talked a bit of investment, particularly with our young people in cryptocurrency. So we have in the studio Jamie Miner, who's going to be a regular part of the show as we talk about investments and how we as a people, independently, individually, and community can continue to benefit from the downside. So we're in an inflationary recession period, but it doesn't mean that there's not opportunity. And that's what we speak of. We can't always afford to get into the game when it's up here and there's a lot of money out there and people are getting rich. But maybe at the point, as we see with crypto and its current state of being down, and as we see with the economy being in inflation, is this the opportunity for us to invest? And we talked about taking $100, maybe saving $100 or $400 instead of spending it on gifts that we find out on the sidewalk as the collections people pick up our refuse, that maybe we take that money and we find a way to invest it. So we begin to really talk about generational wealth and use it as an educational tool for our young people. So let's bring Jamie into the studio and find out how his week has gone and how things have gone with our young people. Jamie, good to see you again. As I mentioned, you're a part of this podcast going forward, and we talked about a couple of the Kwanzaa principles that fit right into what we were speaking of. So what's going on this week, man? What happened? What's happened since last Sunday?
Well, we had some movement with the mentor group. You know, I got a chance to reach out to them, and I guess they had a lot going on though with college at the end of the semester and things like that. So, yep. So, but some of them have already getting them onboarded. Some of them have already made their first investment, so they're involved. They're in crypto, so that's it.
So started. When you talk about the mentor group, we had 3 of our young people that are behind the scenes that have a small pot of money that they're going to use to invest in this down market. I consider this a down market, right? Do you?
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, on that point, which is pretty interesting, is that, you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum, even though it's a down market right now, they've both grown in users. So think about it, it's down 80%. It's the worst it can be. And Bitcoin grew about 5 million users. Ethereum, which we talked about last week, that one grew 35 million users this year. So even though it's going down, people are still coming in. They believe in this technology. It's really starting to take off. That's encouraging for going forward.
Well, we said that it's not going anywhere. And so one thing I want to talk about is people's ability to connect with you, because you're a connection point if people want to invest, if people want to learn more about. And the fact that 5 million people have continued to get involved, including Elon Musk, including Kevin O'Leary. Many of them are not going to not invest. Matter of fact, they're going to buy more. And what we've been saying to you viewers out here, that this is our
Right.
opportunity to take advantage of a down market. Why? Because we have Jamie giving us information that it is a down market. And if you take $100 or $200 a month and invest it, that you may see a return in the long run. So, Jamie, we talked about vehicles for people that may not know about crypto and other forms of investment. How do they find out, or how do they touch bases with you if that's something that they're able to do?
The best place to reach me is on Twitter. Crypto Twitter is like really where crypto lives. So, it's Jamie Miner, JAMIEMINER, the number 9. That's my Twitter. That's the best way to get a hold of me. And we're talking Twitter all day. We're going over different opportunities, different investments, research. We're sharing information, and people that want to get involved and like to be mentored and learn a bit more advanced techniques as far as investing, trading. We do a lot of trading there. There's a lot of opportunity there to take advantage of for right now, but certainly for the future. I believe that. Remember we talked about last week. I wasn't joking. I'm believing that Bitcoin is going to hit $1 million per unit. I was doing some projections forward. I'm thinking somewhere around 2034. So we're in 2000, basically 23, just over 10 years. Imagine if you could get $1 million piece of property or asset for $16,000-$17,000 right now.
Well, break that down for them. So 16,000 may seem like $1 million for some people, right? But when you talk about 12, 13 years from now, us having that sort of
Growth.
cash ability or growth, starting off, because sometimes we want instant gratification. We talked about the slot machines,
That's
and
big.
people, please listen. Please listen to what we're speaking of in a down market. Please understand the principles of Kwanzaa as it relates to us talking about taking advantage of something, looking at 2023 with some real opportunities, some real goals as we go in and make resolutions, right? That here's an opportunity to get involved in something, right, Jamie? That is projecting that could grow to, what did you say, $1 million in
Just over 10 years. And the thing about this technology is
with a $16,000 cash equivalent investment. Is that what you're saying?
for 16,000-17,000. That's what it costs right now. In 10 or 11 years, that same unit of asset would be worth each one about $1 million. But let's say, like you said, if we couldn't afford $16,000 right now, well, let's say you could afford $1,600, right? And that's what we can afford right now. Well, then maybe that same growth amount is going to be $100,000 in 10 or 11 years. So if you don't have to not get involved because you don't have 16,000, but you have 1,600, that same amount is going to grow to $100,000, and it's just magnified over time. And whatever amount you can put in, that's what it's going to multiply to.
Wow. Well, Jamie, let's put your information back up there. We're about running out of time. We want you. Is it possible for you to come back next week so that we can have our young people, that investment network that you have now, so that we can understand where they are, how they started, how they feel, and any potential growth, even if it's as big as a mustard seed in the market right now, to give our people a sense of hope and accomplishment, that it doesn't have to start off large and grandiose, but it starts off small and it just builds from there. So can we come back next week with goals of bringing our young people in with you so that we can talk about where they are, how they got started, and exactly what it is that they are looking for, thinking based on working with you?
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, remember, we've got till April of this next year is when that mathematical equation, when the supply halvings. It's called the halvening, where the value is going to continue to increase. By the end of the year is when we're going to see probably our all-time highs. So going through that whole process, up until that point, we can start building toward that week by week until we get, enough people who are starting to see some growth and some positive movement from this. And hopefully we can get a lot of people involved in learning. I learned all about money when I got involved with crypto. I didn't know anything about it. I thought I did. But once I started paying attention to this, I really started to really understand how money works. And that's what, this mentor group's about, is teaching everybody how money works and how we can get a little bit better ahead than we are now. The recession's coming. It's not going anywhere.
Hey, Jamie, great. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week for another update, right?
Thanks again, Mike, and appreciate your generosity with those kids.
Absolutely, man. There's more to come. There's more to come. Each one of my grandkids, I've got 10 of them, are going to get gifts from me relative to what it is that we're doing so that network grows. And when we talk about Umoja and the other principle of Kwanzaa, that's what it's about. We talk about creativity. That's what it's about. And we're going to show by the power of example in this show how we can do it. And hopefully you at home are able to embrace the same concept. So we'll see you again next week, Jamie, for an update. And you've been watching 60 Minutes in Black America. It's been great. We've been educating you on Kwanzaa. A lot has happened in the country this week. The Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker election was held on Tuesday with Raphael Warnock. He emerged the victor in that race that gave the Democrats a 51-49 majority in the U.S. Senate. And I think we've got some shots up there, so let's show those shots if we can. But guess what happened on Thursday? The young lady Sinema out of Arizona decided that she wanted to be an independent and leverage her power as an independent. So she's not a Democrat, she's not a Republican, she's an independent. Who knows? Maybe that's the way. But congratulations to Senator Warnock on running a campaign that allowed him to eke out Herschel Walker to represent the people of Georgia. And then again this week, Brittany Griner. Everyone knew that Brittany Griner had been arrested in Russia for the possession of a small amount of marijuana. Brittany Griner was freed on Thursday and is back in the U.S. I think she landed somewhere in Texas and is back with her family. Congratulations to Brittany and her family. And, I don't know what it does for us as a people when we look at our ability to travel, and we know that Brittany was probably more of a political pawn than anything. Brittany was a political pawn in the game of chess that are played between these countries. And when you look at that marijuana or marijuana oil, whatever it is that she possessed, and the fact that many of our states just approved this year the legalization of marijuana, what is troubling to me is that a month or so ago, Joe Biden freed thousands of people that were incarcerated for the use of marijuana, right? Wrongly incarcerated. When you compare to the legality of it now, President Biden, to one of his campaign promises, freed a multitude of people, of which the majority were black. And then when you look at the market, I had an opportunity to visit a school. I usually try to visit a public school every week, just to see what's going on, how it's operating, what I can do to help. This school that you're seeing now is the Green Street Academy in Baltimore, Maryland. And Green Street Academy was constructed on the point of green, environmental green. It's a LEED certified school. It has a greenhouse. It has two greenhouses. It has a farm with live wild stock in the farm, and it has a tank that has tilapia. But the issue I had, as I was talking to the farm manager at Green Street Academy, and we saw a absolutely empty greenhouse, was why can't we grow marijuana? Why is the people, 90% of the students that go to this school, 95% of the students that go to this school are African American, 100% of them are on free and reduced lunch. Why couldn't we grow marijuana plants in this greenhouse that sat empty as they attempted to grow lettuce, right? Lettuce, no tomatoes and cucumbers that make a good salad, as their thought is that they were able to feed the community. Well, the community can't eat just lettuce, but these young people could have the ability to attend school for free, college for free, if we were to grow a cash crop like marijuana at that school and teach the kids, because you just legalized it. You just told the kids that it's legal to smoke it. So now all of a sudden we have scruples about the legalization to grow it, and having our high schoolers learn horticulture, agriculture by growing a cash crop, which is now sitting with other communities that don't look like us and has knocked out an economy. Not that it was a good or a right economy of young people in the corner that were selling this, that were the reason that Joe Biden had to give pardons to. So we have a greenhouse sitting empty, marijuana legalized, the ability to grow marijuana in our community legally, that could perhaps ensure that our young people could not only go to a higher education institution, but maybe they wanted to start their own business with this crop. Does it mean that they have to smoke it? No, it doesn't say that. It just says that we have the ability to economically benefit from something that is now legal to something that was illegal and we were locked up by the thousands. And so I implore us to look and to continually look and to be very strategic in terms of how we look for reparations. And maybe it's not reparations. Matter of fact, maybe it's just a matter of being fair to all communities, particularly communities that were taken advantage of. We estimate that slavery gave this country over $350 billion in free labor. But yet we're growing lettuce to feed communities and not giving our people an opportunity to take advantage of that which is of benefit to other communities. Hey, another episode of 60 Minutes in Black America. It's been a great one. Really looking forward to next week when we have Ada Brown, who will be with us talking about the continent of Africa and the culinary aspects of Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week.